All right, fam. Happy Valentine's. So I'm still reading this book for you all. Hurt used to live here. Sometimes beauty can conceal the deepest scars. Is by a sister named Joyce Reed. And so we are now on chapter 7, okay? So let's do this. And again, listen, if you missed some of the previous chapters, just go back in my videos and they're labeled. Okay. Even the small things made us happy, like going to the park, picnics, and barbecues all the time. He was nice to us, and it was a plus that he had children that were in our age group. It was 2 girls and a boy that was in our age group, and we clicked like that. It all went left when Bug got mixed up with the wrong crowd. He started doing drugs, smoking crack, and stealing from the family, but my mother was blind to the fact that he was doing all this. Growing up around other crackheads and drug addicts, it wasn't hard to pick up on it real fast. That has no, that he was truly on drugs. I don't think a person that is not a crackhead will hang around another crackhead. The likelihood of that is slim to none. Bug started to beat my mother, and she would walk around with black eyes and had to go to work like that. I really don't know what the arguments would be about, but all I knew was that he and my brother would try to tune it, no, that me and my brother would try to tune it out and cut the television up or play the radio really loud. I really felt bad for my mom because she was up against a man that was twice her size, and all she could do was just take the punches, and leaving was my option, but that wasn't for me to decide. My mother worked 2 jobs to support her family. Daisy, stop biting that blanket. So she was never really home. My mother never really talked about her personal relationships to us, and she never set us down to tell us that this is wrong and to never live your life like this. What my mom did do was allow us to endure such violence and abuse daily. As I grew up, I thought that if a man hit you, he loved you. If he yelled, he cared. Was I given any reason to think otherwise? They fought and she stayed. Why? I asked. Why can't she leave this man that is abusing her and keeping her ugly? My mom did fight back, but fighting against a 250-pound man is difficult when my mom was 5 feet and weighed around 135 pounds. It only had gotten worse when one day a fight had broken out upstairs in my sister's room, and Bug stood over my mother and beat her and beat her. Me and my brother had gotten tired of it at this point because we knew he was on drugs, and he would only continue if he knew that no one was there to help her or beat his ass for hitting a woman. What me and my brother did was unforgettable. I first jumped on top of him as he was on top of my mother beating her in her face, and I jumped on his back, and he threw me off of him and hit my back on the corner of my sister's dresser drawer. When my brother saw that he was trying to hurt me too, he went to go get a knife and came back into the room and swung it at him and cut him on his arm. This is when Bug realized that we wasn't taking any more, and you were going to leave our mother alone. We both screamed and yelled, "Leave my mommy alone! Leave her alone, you fucking crackhead!" He eventually walked away, and like anything else we dealt with, we all went to sleep, and the next day was like nothing ever happened. Life-changing. The afternoon of May 15, 1996, Michael told me that he was sick and didn't feel good. I knew immediately his sugar was low because he was a diabetic. So I had to fix him something to eat to get his sugar up again after he had taken his insulin. This was nothing out of the ordinary. I fixed him his favorite, which was bacon. After making him a few strips, I made sure he was cool and told him I was going down the street to my friend's house and that if he wanted me, that is where I'd be. I went down the street to my friend's house and I ate some of her mom's favorite homemade cornbread made straight from scratch. Good. I knew at this point Michael was okay because he never came to my friend's house to say otherwise, so I went on with my day. This day didn't feel right to me at all, but I continued with it like any other day. I had so much on my mind, I just didn't feel at least at all, but just couldn't put my finger on it. My brother and my stepfather had just gotten into an argument about something stupid a few nights before, and I felt something was wrong. but didn't know why I was feeling that. I left my friend's house and I went back to check on him, but a few hours had passed by. Then it was around 7 p.m., so I went in the house to look for him, and he was nowhere to be found. It was unusual for him to just disappear, especially without telling me, because we were so close, and we told each other everything. And if you saw him, you would have also seen me. He was my best friend, my brother, protector, listener, and bodyguard. It was getting later and later, and still no signs of Michael. This was the same feeling I felt when little Dayan never returned. When I noticed that he had left his hair pick and his favorite blue, red, and white Indians baseball cap, I told my stepfather that he was not in the house and that he never leaves his hat. He said, "He'll come back. Don't worry about it," with his nonchalant attitude. I still continued to look for him everywhere. I looked under the bed, down the street, at all my friends' houses. I called his friends, his girlfriend's house. I even looked in closets, and he was still missing. My mom hadn't gotten home from work yet. I knew right then and there that he didn't give a rat's ass about him. Michael coming home or not, he was only worried about getting high and finding something else to pawn. So by this time, it was around 10 p.m., and my mother had just made it home from work, and I told her everything that was going on. I already had called all his friends and my friends, and no one had heard from him since earlier that day around 5 p.m. So my mother decided to go and look for him. She looked through the house and even went through the neighborhood. When it was past 11 p.m., she started looking in the trash cans in the dark and rainy alleys all alone, with no help from Bug. All he did was continue to lay in the bed and look like a stone zombie in the face. My mom didn't want to think of the worst, but she had to. That's why she looked in the trash cans, because of the lady that was found dead in the garbage can a month prior, right outside of our house. Someone had stuffed her lifeless body in a trash bin and folded her body in a backwards U. It was a scene from the movies and an image that we never want to see as a kid. She looked and looked, and Michael was nowhere to be found. So she finally made it in the house around 1 a.m. and checked the house again from top to bottom, and Michael was still nowhere to be found. She then started to clean up the house, because when my mom was stressed, she cleaned. And while she was cleaning up, she found that she had a lot of bags that needed to be recycled. This is the only place she didn't look, because it was so dark and scary back there. So she took the bags of paper into the backyard in the basement, and as she reached to cut on the light, she discovered a gruesome discovery. My brother's lifeless body hanging from a pole by a shoestring that wrapped around his neck. His body wasn't facing the front, so my mom had to turn her son around to see that he was dead, and it was really her baby hanging up there dead, while his eyes were wide open and his tongue hanging out of his mouth. His feet were still inches away from the ground, still able to get down if he wanted to. I think after that, her life changed before her eyes. She just saw her only son hanging soulless and helpless. That reality was too much for her to handle. My mother screamed and screamed, and when I heard her, I came from my room upstairs and ran halfway down the stairs to see my stepfather at the bottom of the stairs, sitting across the last step, punching the wall and screaming, "No, no, no!" And my mother was in the dark room yelling, "Call the police! Call the police!" I immediately ran upstairs to call the police. "Hello, 911? Yes, my mom is yelling and screaming, and she told me to call the police. Hurry, hurry!" I yelled frantically. When I got off the phone, my heart fell out of my chest, because I knew then what happened. It took calling 911 to realize what really was happening. I proceeded to run out of the house in just a t-shirt, yelling and screaming, "My brother, no, 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 my brother is dead. He's gone." I then ran to my friend's house and rang her doorbell in shock, not knowing that I had laid my fingers on the doorbell, and it was like 5 a.m. in the morning. When she opened the door, I fell to my knees and begged and pleaded for God. "My brother is gone," I yelled, as I am standing in her front hallway with a t-shirt and underwear and socks on, still not really understanding what really happened. Chapter 7.